So as I started to dive in deeper, learning about Kwanzaa and preparing to celebrate with my son, we went and got all these little things to decorate. I wanted to make sure that I was able to speak to someone that knew all about Kwanzaa. And that is who I have for you today.
My name is Vickey Parks. I'm a lifelong resident of North Omaha, Nebraska, and I have been celebrating Kwanzaa since 1967 in Omaha and sometimes in other places.
Miss Vicky's being a little, humble here,
Yeah.
but she came highly recommended as the person to definitely talk to. So we were having some great conversations just around Kwanzaa. So, Ms. Vicky, if you can just chime in and
Okay.
we kind of pick up where we left off. You
Okay.
were providing such richness.
Well, I always tell people that I started celebrating in Kwanzaa in Omaha in 1967 because the mother of Kwanzaa for Omaha was Bertha Calloway. And Bertha Calloway founded and operated the Great Plains Black Museum. And so the year after Karinga started Kwanzaa, we had a Kwanzaa celebration at the Great Plains Black Museum. And at that time, the only information that could get our hands on was a little pamphlet that Dr. Karinga, who created Kwanzaa, sent to the Great Plains Black Museum. And so when we got that pamphlet, we talked about reconnecting with our Afrocentric roots. We talked about the importance of not commercializing Kwanzaa, that Kwanzaa was a cultural celebration. When we look at the kinds of celebration, we didn't want Kwanzaa to be dumped in with being a religious celebration because Kwanzaa was not created to compete with Christmas. It was not created to be commercialized. And so we celebrate Kwanzaa, the week of Kwanzaa, as a cultural celebration, meaning celebrating our culture. And I think that given the pandemic, this is the perfect time for families to read about Kwanzaa, become educated about Kwanzaa, maybe start celebrating Kwanzaa. But Kwanzaa is the type of celebration where you can give gifts, which is zawadi, the Swahili term zawadi for gifts, which should be educational. And so typically people make Kwanzaa cards to send out instead of Christmas cards or in addition to Christmas cards. They make crafts. One of the crafts that I always taught children was you can make the 7 candles for the dedication of each principle for each day out of toilet paper, red, black, and green napkins, and colored tissue paper. And then as you light the candles, you would put the tissue paper in the wrapped toilet paper ring or paper towel ring, and you would be symbolically lighting your candles. So most of the larger Kwanzaa programs that I went to were in Lincoln in the prison. They had Kwanzaa celebrations every year, and they were some of the largest celebrations that we had in the area. And so many of us would go make it a part of our Kwanzaa celebration to go down to Lincoln to participate in the Kwanzaa celebrations behind the wall. The other thing that we typically do in our home celebrations as well as public celebrations is we would have a libation, and that would be giving tribute to our ancestors. And so when you celebrate Kwanzaa in your home, you would have libations with the eldest person in the family taking a sip for libations, and then it would go down to the youngest person, giving tribute to our ancestors and calling out famous people such as Malcolm X, Sojourner Truth, historic Black people. And then you would go from that phase of it down to family members or friends or loved ones that you know in your family personally. So typically what I always do is try to educate people about Kwanzaa and how we can live by the 7 principles throughout the year. Because when you give Zawadi, the gifts, you give the gifts because the people who are participating have earned Zawadi. In other words, the children have carried out the principles and they've earned Zawadi. So let's say, for instance, you were going to celebrate Kwanzaa in your home. You would start with the bandera, the red, black, and green flag, the red for our struggle and bloodshed, the black for the color of the people and the unity of the people, and the green for looking for our future. Life comes from green things, trees, plants. And so you would have that as a symbol. You would have crops. Traditionally, we would always try to scrounge around and try to find some corn for the crops. Each corn stalk would represent how many children are in the household. So if you had 3 children in the household, you would have 3 stalks of corn for representing the crops. The mkeka is the mat, and the mat is the symbol of tradition, history, and the foundation and knowledge for the people. So you would put down your bandera, and then you would have your mat, and then you would have the kanara, the candle holder, and that would symbolize the collective roots of the people. And then you would have the 7 candles. The 7 candles would be the black candle in the middle, starting with unity, and then 3 candles to your left, symbolizing struggle, and then the other 3 candles on your right, symbolizing hope and future. You would have Kikombe Cha Umoja, the unity cup, which would symbolize unity of the people, and it would be what you would pass around from the eldest to the youngest in your home. And then you would have Zawadi, any gifts. Typically, you would have books that you would give, and then you would go through the principles of lighting the principle. The first principle being Umoja, which means unity. Kujichagulia, self-determination, to define ourselves, name ourselves, create for ourselves, and speak for ourselves instead of having others spoken for us. And during that time, in the late 1960s and 1970s, you had people taking on their African names. So you would have authors like Jawanza Kunjufu. People started renaming themselves in African names as part of their speaking for themselves and their self-determination. Collective work and responsibility, Ujima, to build and maintain our community together and make our brothers and sisters' problems our problems and solve them together. So typically we would have talk about, as part of our celebration, some family or family member or community person that we've helped out to personify our collective work and responsibility in our community, not just in our family. Cooperative economics, we always made it our business to seek out doing business with Black businesses. So part of our cooperative economics was not only to build and maintain our own store, shops, and other business and to profit from them together, but to make it our business to support and spend our money with those businesses, not only during Kwanzaa, but throughout the year. The 5th principle, Nia, purpose, to make our collective vocation the building and development of our community in order to restore our people to their traditional greatness. So what I always typically did was have some segment of our celebration where we learned about the great African kings and queens. We learned about the Middle Passage. We learned about the slavery, the institution of slavery. We learned about how colonized Africans became part of our culture. And so Nia, purpose, was to restore our people to their traditional greatness. The only way you can restore people to their traditional greatness is if you know what their traditional greatness was.
Exactly.
So it was very important for us to, as a matter of fact, a lot of times I would have a lot of the children become dressed in African garb and become the African kings and queens and talk about what they did in Africa and what made them so powerful and important. Koumba, creativity, to always do as much as we can in the way we can in order to leave our community more beautiful and beneficial than when we inherited it. And that's when I always made it a point to write grants to pay African drummers and African dancers and performers people in our community who use their artistic quality to make the community more beautiful and beneficial than when I got here. And the last principle, Imani, faith is on New Year's. And like I said previously, a lot of the churches used to do Kwanzaa celebrations on Imani.
Okay.
And so that's I think I've rambled enough. There are probably questions that you might have to ask me.
You are not rambling. To be honest, I was just soaking everything up. I was like, oh my God, this is so good. It's
Yeah.
so good. Oh my goodness. So my son, he is 8.
Okay. Eight's a
He's
great age.
We have this thing called Car Chronicles. And every time we get in the car, um, we talk about that's our time set aside specifically to talk about Black history.
Mhm.
And but yes, seeing his face delight in people that look like him that did wonderful things.
Right.
And
Well, and here's the other piece. In the 60s and 70s, you could find Black puzzles, Black paper dolls, Black games, Black history games. And there was a reason why we have Black colleges in the South. We have Black schools in the South because Black parents didn't want to trust the education of their children with people who hated them. And
mhm.
so historically, that's how we got segregated schools in the South. And as a result of that, Black colleges. So if you look at it from the standpoint that you're the primary educator of your child, it's going to take work to provide them the kind of education and knowledge that you want them to have. Because I can tell you online, I see a lot of very racist, inaccurate materials about African Americans and our history. And so if you start with books, you can usually get sources of other titles of books, DVDs, even websites, if you want to find some Black book clubs for your kids, but I would start with the book first and the books that you can get your hands on about Kwanzaa.
What do
So
you do during the day? Can I just sit at your feet? Like,
uh,
we just
you
hang
know,
out.
one of the things I'm going to do, and I had said, I used to be very active with the African American Achievement Council of the Omaha Public Schools. And then we got the past white male superintendent who destroyed our organization, took all the funding that we had, that we were doing Kwanzaa programs with parents and kids. We were doing things for OPS. And so I had promised myself last year that I was going to go back and start volunteering with the Omaha Public Schools through their Title I program so we could give out free books. Then the pandemic. And so I had promised myself that for 2021 that I would get actively involved in the selection and promotion of Afrocentric materials throughout the public school system here.
Well, definitely keep us in the loop. We
Yeah.
we want to know. We want to be
Right.
there to support. I'm so thankful that everything worked out for us to be able to talk today.
Yeah, right.
Um,
Thing I want to mention to you is that I think the pandemic has shown us that a lot of the mass gatherings that we enjoyed and loved are going to be modified or a thing of the past. And so this is the time to recommit ourselves to those 7 principles. This is the time to recommit ourselves to being the primary educators of our children. We need to commit ourselves to doing quality educational experiences in our home when kids are out of school. Well,
yeah,
listen, you guys have a blessed Kwanzaa and a happy holiday season. And you got my number, so give a sister a call.
absolutely. Thank you so very much.
You're very welcome. You have a good day.
You too.
Bye bye.
Bye now.